Plug for our church. Our church is kind of a unique beast, which I don't know. Maybe we'll get into some of this, but we're a merged church of the Church of God, Anderson, and the Church of the Nazarene as of last June. So that's been interesting.
Hmm.
And we had we also operate a homeless shelter out of our church, which as of actually this month, I am full time with the shelter and part time at church. COVID has not been good to our church financially,
Oh
so
wow.
um, that
Hmm.
was very much a God thing. And you know, I'm convinced that as the world has changed, the church is changing, or at least it should be.
Hmm.
And I think that there will be fewer and fewer churches able to sustain full time pastors as our world kind of continues to change. So we've been fortunate in that we were able to create a ministry that was, um, compatible with the church, and had the time to build that up so that now, I mean, never knowing we'd be in this moment, so that now we could make that transition. So that's been pretty exciting.
Yeah, we'll definitely check. We'll definitely check it out online. Ben, did you say you were going to link a link to the church? Link a link to the church. Send a link to the
Yeah,
church.
I'll put a link to the church and the podcast
Yeah.
on the
So,
description. Yeah.
do you- does your homeless shelter operate like as a 501c3 or something, Jake?
Yeah,
Could people give to
yeah,
it like online?
yeah, yeah.
Hey, people give to Jake.
GCHopehouse.org.
Yeah, go give to Jake. That's
Yeah.
my plug. Sorry, Jake. I know you
Say
didn't
that
ask, but
again.
I'll
Was
ask for
that
you.
G? Yeah. Yeah. GCHopehouse.org.
Yeah,
All right.
it's
I'll link to
GC
that
as
too.
in Gratiot County. That's our county, Hope House. And so for Hope House, we are. This is actually my Hope House shirt right here. I've got on. Meeting the temporary housing needs of Gratiot County with compassion, grace, and hope is kind of our tagline.
Mm,
And we are a nonprofit, but we are coherent, entirely faith based, and a ministry of the local church. So um, COVID, financially we're fine, but we've not been able to do our thing this year very well with COVID stuff. We don't have the volunteers we need, so that's kind of sucked. But um, other than that, it's a pretty cool ministry.
I also see on your website that you have an Amazon wish list, and so if I would assume if people would like to contribute, they can just click the link to that and purchase those. Are you still looking for those items? I
Yeah,
assume.
yeah. Anything off that list is
All
helpful.
right. Nice.
So
did you think you were going to come on our podcast and we were going to plug all the people that give you money and buy stuff for you?
yeah, I didn't, I didn't realize how many things like I have to plug until right now, actually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I
I'm
guess
not
that's sort of
surprised.
going back
Uh,
to what you had
yeah,
just, yeah. But I guess that sort of goes back to what you had just mentioned,
yeah,
which
no,
is, as the culture changes and as churches change, pastors kind of have to take on these multi roles, and as a part of that, it's like you end up juggling so many hats, and it's hard to describe unless you're sort of in that culture a little bit, but
Yeah,
yeah, you can really get lost in all the things that you have to juggle because there's really no such thing as part-time ministry. And so
right.
it's really just like how many office hours you're putting in, but you're spending a lot of time doing a lot of stuff. So
Well, and uh, on my first Sunday here, um, I told the church that I wasn't going to spend my time sitting behind a desk. I was going to be incarnational in the community. Didn't really know at that time what all that was going to mean, but and then I spent the next 2.5 years sitting behind my desk, which
oh,
I mean, I was 23 when we came up here. I didn't know what I was doing, um, and so I had to do that. I had to learn the church, I had to learn the work. But eventually, we kind of, you know, it was about a 2 year journey for me to begin to shift my paradigm away from what do we do to sustain the church and do churchy things versus what do we do to be for our community. And I started getting
hmm,
involved in stuff. We started looking into what do we, how do we address homelessness in our community? That was something God had impressed on my heart. Um, and then I got involved in our treatment courts, and so I work. I'm on our mental health and sobriety court teams here in our community, which has been amazing, amazing ministry. Um, and then, of course, we work with a school. We've got a meal program that we do when it's not COVID. We've got a lot of stuff like that going on. That's been pretty exciting.
Jake, I'm not really surprised that you have this much going on and that you're doing all these things. So, I'm going to do a quick transition for us here, but I want to tell you how I know Jake. So I have a similar story to Ben. Jake got me my first, I'll call it my first real job. Why he hired me to this day, I do not know. Maybe he'll shed some light on that in the podcast. But Jake actually managed a program that Ben and I were a part of. We kind of mentioned it, and I think we can just jump into it real quick, and then we'll talk about a little bit of our fun stuff. Probably give some context to some of the questions we have for Jake. We did a program called Preaching Ambassadors, which became Preaching and Music Ambassadors at Olivet Nazarene University. Really, it was Ben. Ben, it was you, and who's the others two? Was it Jake or some Jake Goodspeed? Were you guys the first two?
Jake Goodspeed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then the original six, then after you two.
You guys started in October?
Yeah, we started, our first trip was in November of 2009. And then Jake Gregory joined in the spring
January
for our second trip. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I came in fall of 2010 because Ryan Page wanted to bail on a trip. He's like, "Hey, have you written a sermon before?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You want to preach for me this weekend?" I was like, "Sure." He's like, "Here's Tony Fightmaster's phone number," and that's how you guys got a hold of me. But anyway, that's a true story. That's 100% a true story. Literally on third floor Chapman, this whole thing went down. So I literally was 2 days later in a van with Tony Fightmaster. It was like you, Jake. I think Ben, you might have been in the van. Sean Cooper was in the van, and I think that's where I met Rick too. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. That sounds right. I'm fairly confident that we were all in a van. I can't remember anymore. Anyway, so I met Jake that way, and I worked Jake pretty closely. Down in a van down by the river. I'm not as funny as Chris Farley nor as Jolly. Anyway, so that's how I got to know Jake, and we were part of a leadership program, a leadership team, I guess, not really program, that kind of made some like board style decisions for the group, and that's how I really got to know these two guys really well. And we just always had a good vibe together, I thought, like as friends. So I was getting ready to graduate, and I was kind of looking to stay around all of that, and I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And so I actually went to one of Jake's coworkers, and I was like, I wish I could do your job. And Jake was sitting in the room, and he literally swivels around like Dr. Evil and Austin Powers and goes, "What about my job?" And I was like, what? So to this day, Jake, I don't know what possessed you to do that. But I really appreciate it, because that job has literally, and that reference I got from Tony. Yeah, this happened, and I'll never forget it. But anyway, your just turn around and say that was one of the references that got me the role at my current place of employment. And even when I applied for my new gig at my current place of employment, they went back to my references, which was Tony. But I would never have had that connection if you just hadn't been like, why not me? And it was great. So I just want to say I really appreciate you, man. You don't know the impact that has done for me, both like as a person and financially, because I was able to stay at all that for a year. I dated my now wife that entire time. So appreciate you for that. You don't know any of this, do you? And then, like I said,
I don't even remember that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So like I owe you for a lot. And secondly, I was able to make some pretty good friends that are like really good friends to this day. And you basically started a big series of dominoes in my life that really brought me to kind of my current circumstance. So really a big shout out to Jake. That's how I know Jake. He's a big guy. So, but one of the things that always stuck out to me, and Ben, you can double down on this, and Jake can be awkward because we're going to give him a praise fest real quick, is like, he's always had you always had like such a big vision. You always had your hand in a bunch of different things. You know what I mean? And in a good way, like in a really good way. Like you just were really passionate about what you cared about. And like when you just talked about your church, I just really felt that. Like it just came through. I mean, I expected it because I know you, but like it really came through strongly. And I just gotta say, I really appreciate that about you, and I really appreciate your pod and what you guys are doing, because I think it's a really good thing. And I think being creative in ministry, like as a layperson, right, I'm not a pastor, like those are the kind of churches that stand out to a person like me that's looking for a body to get involved in. Like that's the kind of thing that I think is going to drive community. I mean this because that's what you guys are doing, community engagement with like a church, and keep it relevant as it tries to minister to a community, it's less of that like ivory tower stuff that you kind of mentioned, right? Like the sitting at a desk, and it's more of like that hands-on, really incarnational. So I just want to say I really appreciate you. I'm not surprised that you're doing a million great things, because you've always been that way. It's just part of who you are and in your DNA. So with my I don't know what that is, my gratuitous man crush out of the way, let's get to the fun questions.
Gratuitous man crush. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. That you should get a t-shirt
Well,
like that, Jake. Gratuitous man
I
crush.
appreciate that.
What, gratuitous man crush?
It's funny. I remember, I don't remember if it was when we were preparing to move up here or what, but saying, "Oh, I just, you're gonna." You and Hannah, I think, were talking about placing bets to see how long it was going to take for our church to just explode.
Yeah.
Which you both would have lost money by now, but
I don't know. It depends on what you mean by explode.
Yeah. But it's we used to have so many great conversations, and I always loved that. I loved any time you came to the attic of Harlow Hopkins Alumni Center. That was a good afternoon. So
yeah, I used to come and bug you a lot.
I feel like I did that too.
Yeah.
How did you get work done, Jake?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I worked at home a few days a week, but
yeah. And I also think that Sorry, I was gonna say I feel like those moments though, like really fed into like how we do ministry though too, because we just be up there just sharing stories, and sometimes we would just have an idea like, hey, why don't we do this? And it wasn't like committee think; it was just like very organic. Let's try this. In the direction of the preaching ministry or whatever. And I loved that atmosphere of just like actually engaging creativity instead of like we got to sit down, we got to plan everything out, make sure it all fits perfectly, and like some of those meetings. But it sounds like, at least from what you're sharing about your church, you're sort of integrating that into how your church is approaching how it does ministry.
Yeah, we do. And I will tell you, I loved that job, and I grieved that job for a long time. It took a long time before I didn't miss that, because I wasn't ready to leave. We left Olivet because of other things in our life, and made a transition sooner than we had anticipated. And in fact, most people don't know this, but when Tony found out, I owe so much to Tony, and if he listens to this, shout out to Tony, because I owe about everything in my world to him.
I think all of us do to some extent.
Oh yeah. He, when he found out we were going to transition, without saying anything to me, he went to a pastor in the Olivet area and it was Ed Heck, and went to Ed Heck and was like, I need to interview this guy because I don't want to lose him. And I ended up not going that way. And then when I had resigned, Tony goes, you have to go tell Brian Allen now. He wants to talk with you. And so when I sat down with Brian Allen, he's like, are you sure you have to go? Are you sure that you have to, And I said, yeah, we do. And he said, well, you have left your mark here. And I thought, my goodness, I don't think I really did that much, but I loved that work, and missed it for a very long time.
Great job.
I had a hard time relinquishing it. And to tell you the truth, Jordan, I mean, of the people who were staying around, I think you were the only one I could trust with it. And not that it was mine to entrust. It wasn't my organization, but I had built the infrastructure for it. And I think you were the only one I could trust to not ruin it.
Well, one of the things was I really bought into your vision. Like I really bought it. Like honestly, Jake, like when I first met you, I just didn't know how to take you a little bit. I just didn't because you're very because you're just so driven and direct and passionate and like on it. You know what I mean? I'm just not that way. I'm just like more of like a mess. I'm like a blob of goo that just shows up places. So I was just like, man, this guy's like intense. He's like crazy. But like you just kept like, and that's just like it's just a sign of a good leader, dude. Like actually, I learned a lot of leadership stuff from Tony, but I learned a lot from like you, from Ben. Definitely actually learned a lot from Jared Ritchie, who I was supposed to be teaching. But yeah, that didn't happen. He taught me everything. But like you guys just cast visions and like have such genuine, like it's so attractive and easy to buy in. And like every decision you made, like I was able to see before I got in your spot, like why you did it that way. And it was really helpful. So that's really nice of you to say, but like, I don't know, man, just take the credit because you crushed it. And it was such an easy gig to like come in there and keep it going. I'm a little surprised I didn't ruin it. I just kind of kept it going. I was really a 1 year placeholder. And when I found out I was only going to be 1 year at all of that, that's when we picked Jared to replace us, who took it to some really good places. All right, Jake, what is the best church you ever visited in preaching a master's? Keep it a little on topic, but lighter. Your favorite PA trip. Ben, I want to hear yours too.
I had a lot of great trips. Anywhere that I went to northern Michigan was my favorite, but the most meaningful was Eaton Rapids with Pastor Dallas McFarland. I went there 3 times. I never did Charlevoix. I never preached there, but Eaton Rapids, because Dallas is the pastor that did my sister's funeral. My parents lost my older sister. He dedicated me, and he did both my grandpa's funerals. And when I was ordained 3.5 years ago, he was the pastor who prayed for my ordination. And the cool thing was, I didn't tell anybody in my family that I was that it was going to be Dallas, so that when he prayed, it was all a surprise to them, which was kind of cool. But getting to go and preach at his church was kind of what reconnected us after all those years.
That's awesome. Do you guys still keep in touch?
I haven't talked with him as much since he retired. And he had not long after that, he had a stroke. But I think I see him down at the campground, most summers. So
I thought you'd pick either Charlevoix, Iron River, or Sheboygan. Those are the 3 spots that I thought you would pick as your best trip. I don't know if you preached I know you preached in Iron River, but
yeah, of those ones I did, but Sheboygan and Charlevoix were about the only churches on the Northern Michigan district I didn't preach at. Which, I mean, I guess there's a few more, but I hit a lot of those. I was telling somebody today, I went everywhere from Evansville, Indiana to Marquette, and I did Marquette in February. As far west as the Quad Cities and east as Liberty, Indiana. I covered the whole region. I had 50.
Yeah, you really did.
51 churches, I think, in those 5 years.
I got you beat, dude. I got 52. I'm not even kidding. I counted it up. I had exactly 52. Let's go. Sorry, Ben, did you count yours?
I think I had 50 or 51 churches also, but I didn't travel on summers.
I had 51 churches, but that doesn't count the revisits. I had more trips than that, I think.
Oh.
Yeah,
it doesn't count the one I went to twice.
Yeah, that's true. Beats, what about you? What was the best trip? Or best? Yeah, I guess it was the best trip, or I guess best church you visited. Favorite visit? I don't know.
Oh, geez. I think my favorite visit was probably in Anderson, Indiana. So shout out to the people down there. And I think the big reason for that was I went there and it was a pastor and his wife and one of their teenage sons that was there. I think he was 18. I think he was graduating that year. And for whatever reason, I don't know what it was. They just made me feel like family when I was there. And I loved preaching at that church. The people were great. It was a tremendous service. And I almost pushed for an opening that they were having for a family pastor. I almost wanted to go for it, but it just wasn't the right time. But that was probably my favorite one. Yeah. What about you, Britt?
That's a good one.
Oh, it wasn't the guy with the horses, was it?
No.
Okay. I thought that guy was in Illinois. I thought he was in what's it called? He did Hooves of Hope, right? In Hoopeston, Illinois. That guy.
No,
I wasn't.
No,
different guy.
No, there was the last trip you and Goodspeed and I took in Indiana. That you said that pastor had those horses, and then we just started taking turns to get back, and we didn't follow a map, and it took us forever just for fun.
Yep, I remember that. Yeah.
That didn't sound
Totally
very
different
fun.
driving styles. I would stick to highways the whole way to get back as quick as possible, and Jake
That's not Jake,
would
man.
take all the
That's
side roads.
he's a
One
back
time
road
we even
man, and I
drove
love
up
it.
to a windmill. Like that's how the side roads
That
were. Like
was
we literally drove up to a windmill. It was ridiculous, and it was kind of freaky too, being under that
that
thing.
was that trip. That was that trip. We're like, let's just start taking roads and see where we go. You were in on it at that time.
Yeah, yeah. I think Goodspeed fell asleep.
Yeah,
I don't
he
know.
did.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So, what was your favorite
That
place,
guy was the
Jordan?
chillest dude.
Yeah.
It's one of two. One of yeah, one of I'm gonna give three. I'm gonna give three actually. All right, sorry. I had to think about it. Option one is the Bellevue Church. Russ Brewer, love that guy. He just told me
Oh
I
yeah,
literally
they
hadn't
love
even
you.
done anything. I walked in the door. He goes, "I'm adopting you. I'm adopting you." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Who's your favorite baseball team?" I was like, "Well, it's actually the Cardinals." He goes, "Now you're really adopted." Like he locked in with me. But like he just like went out of his way just to like bless me. He called me, he emailed me, he would just check in. Like he's just Russ really understood incarnational ministry. Like, he was older and he wasn't in great health. He'd get up at 5 o'clock on a Sunday morning and he would drive to East St. Louis, which is one of the worst, most unsafe places. And he would take me with him and we would just pick up kids. I would just pick up kids, like high school, elementary, didn't matter. Just pick up kids, a bunch of them. Like we had literally a church bus full of kids, like 10, 15, like double the size of the church, just in all these kids that are going to let their kids go to church. And this isn't like a volunteer doing this. This is Russ doing this before like when I'm not there, before he's going to preach a sermon. You know what I mean? Also, they don't really have anybody that leads worship. So him and his wife lead worship. So like, it's kind of a one-man show in the best possible way. Like that dude was there and he was just praying for people. Like you could just tell like the rapport he had in that community. And it was really interesting because like Bellevue is a fairly nice suburb, but he just like really understood that the people that in his church and near him and his part of Bellevue were a lot less like what you think of Bellevue when you think of like that suburb of St. Louis, which is like nicer. It's pretty like working class, middle class, but he went to like a really, really rough area, like dangerous area, like Hokia, East St. Louis, and just like loved on those kids. And I just like watching that, like changed how I approached ministry. It changed how I like saw things. And like, I resonate with that because I grew up in an urban area. So it meant a lot to me. And then just Russ is just a good person. So it was either him, pastor, is it William Wright or is it Brandon Wright at Detroit Grace? Not Detroit Grace, Detroit New Hope. Detroit New Hope. That was awesome. That was just a great trip because that church just loves on you when you go in there. And like I think I've never preached a better sermon, and I don't think I preached a word. I think I just got a bunch of amens, and it was like 100%. Just like the Spirit was just moving. You know what I mean? Like and like. It's I don't know, like the atmosphere to preach in that church was awesome, and I just like Detroit in general. I have a soft spot for Detroit as a city because he just drove me around the city and he was just telling me like this is what goes on here, this is what goes on here, this is where our people are. He's like, this is what we're trying to do, and just like that was just really good. And the last one is a little bit more personal. One of my worst sermons. I was just so flabbergasted. I honestly was just shook. I couldn't do it. Quincy, Illinois, which is basically Missouri. If you've never heard of Quincy, it's tiny. Well, it's actually not that small, but the church is actually pretty decent. I walk in, they like do the regular thing. They're very hands off. They like kind of put me off by myself. And then I come in on Sunday, like from the parsonage, because the pastor didn't love the parsonage, if I remember correctly. And, I come in, I'm getting ready to do my Sunday school thing, and we kind of do that. And then like one kid shows up. So we really didn't have a traditional Sunday school like we normally did. And then I go into the service, and before we even start worship, he calls me up on stage. And I'm like, what is going on? And they handed me this like check for like $600. And the reason this is a big deal, the reason this is a big deal is my dad had lost his job at the time. So I didn't have a way to pay for school. And I literally was $550 short. I kid you not. Like, so I was $550 short. So they gave me a check for like $600. And I literally called Tony crying when we were leaving back. Cause I was the only person on that trip. I was like, literally took a car by myself. And I was just like, this is really powerful. So like, Tony was just like, I don't know, he was really happy. So like those are probably like, I can't decide which one of those trips, cause like they all mean a lot to me in different ways. Like, I don't know. That's probably not a good answer because I have to I told you to pick one. I just picked three, but I make the questions, so I get different rules. But those are the three trips for me.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, sorry. That story got way longer. It was supposed to be light, and then it got serious. But it was just awesome. Like, it's just cool to see God work in that spot. All right, let's move on. Unless you have another thing else you guys want to throw. Any other church trips? Any other blessings? Good experiences you want to share? People loving on people? No.
I mean, we
Okay.
could go on forever about preaching ambassador trips.
We could.
Yeah.
We should.
Which
We
is
You have
just
some
should.
really
to,
interesting ones about the
yeah.
rough trips.
Jake, what do you
About
miss most about
when
all of
Ben
that?
was abandoned in some youth pastor's basement.
Oh,
Dude, I was
you're gonna have
actually
to
going to
repeat
ask you
that
about the
one.
craziest story, but I was afraid
You,
to.
yeah, when didn't you stay with some youth pastor and he left you by yourself in his basement and left to go hang out with his friends or something?
Yeah, that was
There was no
super
heat.
awkward. Yeah, there was no heat. The main level of his house is where I stayed. It was the
Oh,
parsonage. They dropped me off there, and then he just left, and I was there by myself. So I just played like Halo for like 3 hours because there was nothing else to do there. And it was like 50 degrees, and it was freezing. And in the morning, I had to take a shower in the bathroom, and the bathroom shower head didn't work. So I had to squat in the bathtub and splash water on myself in 50 degrees. And because this was like in the middle of February, it was brutal. But it was funny because he put me on an air mattress, which of course deflated overnight. But he comes back and he sees me sleeping under my blankets with my coat, with my boots, with my gloves and my cap on. And then he asked me like, "Oh, like, are you cold?" And I'm just like, "Bro, what do you think?"
Are you not
But
in the room?
yeah, I was just like, whatever. But it was fine. I mean, the funny thing is, like, the bad
I had the
experiences
opposite experience.
kind of stick with you, but you also have the most to learn from those. So I make fun of it, but I'm also really thankful for that experience too, and it makes for a good story.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
endearing. I had a church. I had the opposite experience. I stayed with an older couple in July. It was right after Allison and I got married, and I promise you, they were the couple from Up. Like they were. He even looked like the guy from Up.
That's awesome.
And they didn't have they had separate bedrooms in this super old Victorian house, and they locked the doors at 7 o'clock because it was a bad neighborhood. And I slept on an old couch with his room like right. All that divided my room from his room was an accordion wall, like a collapsible wall. And I could hear the air conditioning window unit running in his room as I was laying there sweating in the room, my room, at 8 o'clock at night trying to fall asleep. And then we got up in the morning and had oatmeal for breakfast.
I don't have a good one that's not like really really crazy, so I'm not going to share mine. It's bad. Like it would put people at jeopardy. Uh, just don't. Just if you're a Nazarene pastor listening to this, just make sure you get good room separation. Just leave it at that. In terms of like people, it is weird, dude. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Anyway, I don't want to get into it. It's not as gross as I'm making it sound. It's actually just really dark, but neither here nor there. So let's go to this. Jake, this is a little bit better of a question. What is the best part about being a pastor? Now that you've been in the field for a little bit.
Community. I mean, which is
Mm-hmm.
hard because sometimes it's really, really lonely. Um,
Really?
but having people that you love and that love you in return, which I realize not every pastor has, but we've been fortunate enough to have that, and to just be doing life with folks. And we have some folks. I mean, sometimes I get really frustrated and irritated with people, but I never question whether or not they love me, and I don't think they ever question whether or not I
Hmm.
love them. And we've been through some stuff together, um, and that has been the best part.